Jackie, can you start by just telling us a little bit about your background and how you got into this and specifically what you do in the area of marketing technology?
Sure. So I started my company, Queen of GSD, which is getting shit done. I don't know if we can say that, but that's what it is.
You can say that. I know. I think you can say that.
Well, I did. So anyway, so that's my company. I started about 3.5 years ago. Before that, prior to that, my career was really based in sort of digital communication. So everywhere in between what that looks like, whether that's design or website or actual communication pieces. I worked in corporate America. I've worked with small companies. A huge part of my background also comes from patient advocacy. So I live in the advocacy world, but the reason I bring that up is because when I first started, I needed a web presence. This is, many moons ago, and I was broke and young and had no money. So I had to learn how to make my own stuff.
Yeah.
And through that process, though, I learned all about websites, and now website building management is part of what I do for a living. So I kind of like found that part of my career. And that's kind of where I started my business, but where it's really kind of shifted to over the last couple of years is in this realm of productivity systems, making things talk together that aren't supposed to talk together, and trying to make life easier for small business owners with automation or just tools that make the day-to-day a little less trying so you can do what you want to do, which is run your actual business.
Yes, because so much of what we're trying to automate are really the mindless, repetitive, administrative tasks. So I should say to everybody that Jackie is not only the woman behind Queen of GSD, but she's also a Jottful community member, which means that we send her customers all the time who need help with their marketing technology. So we work together, we collaborate quite a bit. Jackie, can you tell us a little bit about when we as business owners should start using these kinds of tools, especially tools that can help, automate things? Because is there a time that is really too early to begin to automate?
My personal opinion is no. If you are looking for customers, even if you don't have clients yet, but you're looking for them, it's time. And the reason why is because in the beginning, you want to find a system that feels good for you. And it might take a couple to kind of, maybe you don't like the interface, maybe you don't like the tools, or, you want to have time to really kind of like try a system out. And in the beginning, when you have 3 customers, it's a lot easier to transition systems versus when you have 300 customers.
True.
So I know a lot of people think that, oh, my business is too young. I don't have any clients, or I only have a couple. I don't need a system like that. But the systems are built to help you scale. So as opposed to retroactively adding everybody in and all their information, it's so much easier just to start with a system and grow with it.
Okay, maybe we can break that down then. Maybe there are some systems that make sense on day one and others that we should layer on later. I get the impression that one of the systems you're talking about having very early on is a CRM. Am I correct?
Yes.
What is a CRM? Just explain it to everybody. Talk about maybe what the most common CRM software applications are for businesses of our size, and why would somebody want to use a CRM?
Sure. So a CRM is a customer relationship management system, which is a fancy way of saying like keeping track of customer information. So, and they run the gamut too, right? I mean, if you've heard of Salesforce, that's a CRM, right? It's a much bigger scale, but most people have heard of it. And so if you look at something like Salesforce is a CRM where there's just endless options of what you can do in there. We're talking about a scaled down version for a lot of the businesses that, we work with. And there are a lot of CRM systems available to businesses like ours. Sometimes there are industry specific ones. So there are ones specifics for coaching or specifics for construction or whatever. And sometimes there are just general ones that can work for any business. And so what you're doing with your CRM is it's giving you a place to store information. So ideally contact, notes. That's kind of like the real basic.
What deals you're working on. This is a really important piece, right? The deal stages.
Yes. And some of them are designed to carry specifically create pipelines. So we're in the first stage. We sent a proposal. We've received it back. They've made a payment. Like you can track all of those things.
Right. And what step is needed and when you need to complete that next step, right? And very, very helpful during the sales process.
And maybe you need an automated reminder to yourself to follow up with them, things like that. So anything you would write down in a notebook about a client or if you have a Google Doc with client information, that kind of information is all compiled into a CRM. And most of them today now also do invoicing. So if you are in that process of maybe pitching or, putting out projects and proposals, all of that is usually done within a CRM that in this kind of space.
Yeah. So oftentimes businesses will start and their CRM is a spreadsheet. So an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet, and they're just tracking in there, who are my customers or clients, who are my sales prospects. And if it's a sales prospect, what stage is it in, and what's the next step, and when do I expect it to close? And when it does close, how much is it going to be worth in terms of revenue? And then companies tend to graduate out of that spreadsheet and into a CRM product, which is really a way to sort of more formally hold this stuff. It's much cleaner. You can report on it. It's really, really next level. Then we see companies more and more want to start adding email communications to that. So automated, maybe they're sending a newsletter on a weekly basis. What happens when you want to start adding those kinds of broadcast communication capabilities?
Sorry, it's a dry in this room. Yeah. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. And the reason why is because there are some systems that have all of this built into it, right? Yes. They're very robust and it's like a one-stop shop. Not all of them do. And it doesn't mean they're worse, but it just means that you have to make them talk to each other. And a lot of them integrate very easily. Some of them need third-party systems to integrate them, which is where it gets a little intimidating, a little bit scary. But this is why I encourage people to start early, right? So that way, let's say right now you have a MailChimp and you use Calendly to book appointments and you have Wave apps to send out invoices, right? You have all three of these systems. They're working well for you, but it's not ideal because everything is in a different spot. So right now in your business, these are the three needs that you have, and you go look for a CRM system maybe that has all of these things or has most of these things, which is a great place to start thinking about what you need right now. But you also want to think about where you want to be. So maybe you don't need email marketing right now, but you're like, my 1-year plan is to integrate a newsletter in or something. So I would kind of make a list of all the things, all the features, all the tools that you use or you plan to use. And when you start looking at some of these systems, look at what they have and what they don't have, because all of the tools that we can talk about, any productivity tool, all the systems are very similar, but in the details is where they're different. And what is not fun is when you get into a system and you're like, oh, I thought it did X and I've invested all this time setting it up and it doesn't do this one piece. Yeah. So that's why it's also really good to start early, because then it's not such a heavy lift. If you were like, whoops, this one doesn't do what I need it to do, I'm going to go over here to this other one.
Yep. Yeah. And I think a big trend we're seeing is that a lot of these software applications, some of them came from the CRM direction, others came from email marketing or what's called marketing automation. A lot of them are really converging into what, you referred to earlier as these really robust applications that include CRM and marketing automation. And, some of the most common examples for small businesses like ours would be HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, MailChimp. These are probably the most common ones you see, right?
Yeah. And I think, again, like sometimes the other thing is people will sign up for one feature, but it has other things, they don't use them or they don't know if they need them. So like Acuity, right? Acuity is a great system for calendar scheduling, but you can also use it to sell classes or courses or any kind of booking system, things that you want to book and sell, but sometimes people are only using it for one portion of it, right? So it's like, if you look at your tools and you go, it only does this, is that all that you need? Or it does these 5 things. Do you need these 5 things? This field is great because there are so many options, very specifics to get to what you need it to do. But that's also what makes it really overwhelming, is like assessing, what do you need? How does it work? Does it work together? And so that's why I encourage everybody to kind of start small. So again, look at what are your needs right now and start there. Because if you just go look for like booking software, there's just endless opportunities and options, and it becomes overwhelming very quickly.
One of the things that I think is really important to point out is that a lot of these applications grow with you from a pricing perspective.
Yes. Yes.
So if you come in, I know with Active Campaign, for example, it's based on, there's a initial sort of flat rate, but after that, it's based on the number of contacts you have. So the bigger you get, the more contacts you have, the more you pay them. Then there are others. I think HubSpot is kind of, they have like a free forever CRM and you pay if you need the marketing component. So there are ways to get in really inexpensively and also very often free.
Yes.
And then you just start to pay more as you grow, which makes sense.
The CRM that I use is called Dubsado. And one of the smartest features that I think that they have is their whole system is free to use for up to 3 clients. So you can get in there and set up everything. You can play, you can create a full list of automations before you pay a dime. And to me, that's awesome because there's nothing worse than like, you know, a 2-week trial and you're like, well, I have to set up everything to see if it works. And then you run out of your trial time or something. So I really like that about them because to your point, they have sort of an unlimited thing. So it's a one-time fee, but do you need all those things? Don't know, you know, and in something like MailChimp or Active Campaign, right, where it can grow with you, why pay for the things you don't need? If you can get a cheaper rate for exactly what you need, those are, in my opinion, there's pros and cons to scalable systems as well as sort of an all-in-one system. But again, I keep coming back to just reassessing like where you are right now. Where are you starting at? And if you need to grow, can it grow with you?
So it makes sense to get these systems that we need, these database systems that we need in place right away, because it is a huge hassle if you need to move even from a spreadsheet into a system or between systems. But then there's a second level of sort of systemization, which is really around automation of processes. And you mentioned it earlier when you talked about, you know, automating maybe reminder emails that go out. For example, at Jottful, when a customer books an appointment, they receive automated reminder emails from us, automated text message reminders. They don't miss their appointment. After their appointment, they receive automated messages from us. It's all scripted out. But initially, we did every single one of those tasks manually. And it was only by doing it manually that we were able to see what actually really needed to be done and what didn't, and how we might change the wording and what messaging we were missing or not, right? Like going through all of that manually so that we had it all worked out. Then we were in a place where it made sense to start to automate it. So would you recommend that as well? If it's a database, get it started right away. But if it's a process, let the process run manually for a while until you're sure about it before you automate it.
Yes, especially because if you do a system that has workflows, which enables you to kind of automate based on triggers or some, you know, somebody submits a form or creates an appointment or something like that, you really, before you set up the system, which takes time and effort and energy, you want to know what you need it to do. So one of the things that I do with clients when we set up CRMs is I make them, I ask them to create a customer journey map, which basically is, if they submit this form, what do they want to happen? Okay, then what happens? Okay, then what happens? And so what you do is you look at all the different assets you need to create a workflow. Is it 3 emails? Is it a form? Is it, you know, what are all the pieces? So that way, when you go to create that process, you know what's in the whole system. And then you know, I have to write 5 emails. I have to create this. I have to do that. And so I definitely think there is value in maybe don't automate it for a little while, especially if it's something new, because what you might find, like I am somebody who loves these processes. So I will go ham and make a whole bunch of them. And then I realize, actually, I didn't need 3 or 4 of those steps. I just wanted them and I thought they would be helpful. So in the beginning, have a Word doc with canned emails that you save, right? So if you find yourself sending the same email over and over again, you can set them up through Gmail to have canned emails. But if you're not using that, use the same email, save yourself time, copy, paste, but save that email later if you want to automate it too. I mean, there are even systems that you can create just for automating your email and nothing else, right? You know, no other fancy features. So if your business is one where you're in email and you're just wielding kind of the same questions back and forth all the time, automate it as much as you can. And sometimes automating just means write it out and copying and pasting it.
Mm-hmm. And oftentimes when you're copying and pasting into your email, there are certain fields or things that you need to change. Obviously, you need to change their name, their first name, right? You might have to add in a special link or something for them. Once you've done that a few times and you know what those things are that you're constantly customizing for that particular recipient, then you can go and you can add that email into your automation software and have it plug in those fields.
Yes.
I mean, we do that. So after a sales call, we send kind of a summary email afterwards, and it automatically plugs in their first name, right? And sort of automatically plug in a few of those things, and it makes it so much easier. And you're not forgetting things. You're not having to go back down the list again of all the little things you have to tick off. A lot of that is just done for you. It really opens up a lot of headspace.
Well, and you're also not risking looking unprofessional because you forgot to swap their name or you forgot to write their correct web address or something. It kind of saves your butt too in the process of maybe making it a little bit easier. There's one thing I wanted to touch on too before we get too far away from it. In terms of switching systems, sometimes a lot of these systems offer a white glove service where, let's say you're in 17 Hats, which is another CRM system for small business owners, but you want to switch to Dubsado. They will copy over your forms, your contracts, a bunch of that stuff for free for you, which if you're in the beginning, again, you might not have that much stuff, but if you are later in the process and you have been doing this for a while, I would definitely see if that is an option because it saves so much time for you as the business owner. And then you can just get in your system and start going.
Yes. And sometimes if you've been using one system and you're switching to another system that's a competitor of the one that you're currently using, they'll have kind of a one-click button to transfer over that data if they're accustomed to taking customers from similar competitors.
Yes.
So once that's kind of like how you can get set up initially. Is there somebody that we can work with to help us out? Obviously, somebody like you, Queen of GSD. Do you help people figure out what software application they need and help them get set up with it?
Yes. So one of my, again, nerd topic favorite things to do is basically an assessment. So let's talk about you. Let's talk about your business. What's working well about your systems? What is not working well? And then what I'll put together is basically a series of suggestions or recommendations. If you use this system in this system, that would work well. But if you use this one, you're going to miss this. So giving you options, price points, because that matters too. Some of this stuff is really affordable. Some of it's not. So, where are you in the process? And then from there, what I like to do is set it up for you. So that way, like the initial, oh my God, this is so much is removed, but then create training videos. So that way, if you need to edit something or you do need to know how to do something, you're not always coming to me and you're not stranded. So I like kind of whole picture it, right? Like if you want to learn how to set up the whole thing, I'll teach you how to do it. But I find most people are like, I just want it to work.
Right.
And I need to know how to make small edits. And that works for me too.
So it seems like there's the initial, which application do I select, right? Who do I work with? And then there's the getting implemented. So getting all of your information into the system. There's kind of the next level of automation. So once you're in there and you're really using it, taking the processes that you're currently doing manually and systemizing them in your software so that you can start to automate those communications. And then there's another level, which is really connecting different software applications together or integrations. And sometimes software applications will automatically have that built in. So they're accustomed to integrating. Oftentimes, what we do at Jottful is we use a product called Zapier, which I think of as kind of a Rosetta Stone for software applications. So you have software application on A, software application B. Zapier sits in the middle and sort of translates between the two of them. So you can say, take the person's name and email address from software application A, pass it through Zapier and stick it into software application B, right? This is pretty common. We use it all the time to integrate different software applications. I assume you set up Zapier all the time too.
Yeah, I don't know what we did before. Like you had all these systems that just never worked together before, you know, and now, you know, a lot of the big hitters, right? Like MailChimp will integrate with almost anything at this point, or like Stripe will integrate with almost anything at this point. But sometimes specifically with the size of businesses that most of us have, some of the smaller tools that are great tools just don't quite have that power yet in the system where they, you know, they can reach out to another system and say, let's create an API together. Instead, we use something like Zapier, which says, you know, we might work a little bit harder to make it work together on our end, but it'll still work nicely once it's set up.
Yep. For everybody listening today, Zapier is spelled Zapier, and is a great tool for connecting two different systems together. And you're right, a lot of software packages don't bother building out those integrations anymore because they don't have to, because anybody can use something like Zapier to do the connection for them. They just build a connection to Zapier, and Zapier takes care of the rest.
Yes. And Zapier is great for a lot of reasons, but one of the things I love them most for is that they do offer a free level, right? So if you're like, I just need my email opt-in form to connect to my CRM, and you just need that one zap, which is what they call the action doing the connecting, you can do that for free, which I'm all about finding the tools that work well for free, because in the beginning, every little bit adds up. And not even in the beginning, yes, but even over time, as you grow, you need more tools, or maybe you need better tools or whatever. So the price point is always important to me, because nobody has like Salesforce money, at least nobody I work with, you know?
Yeah. And nobody wants to spend a whole bunch of money on month one without even knowing if the software is going to work for you. So those free trials and those freemium starter accounts, I think are really, really useful.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? I was going to ask another question here about, Zapier. It'll come to me. So, Jackie, if you were to do this all over again, what is one thing that you would recommend to our listeners today?
I kind of already touched on it, but it would really be to try different systems. And I know that that's time consuming, especially if you want to set up and test stuff in each system, right? If you want to like create an email workflow or create an opt-in form or something like that, it does take time. But because each system has nuances in how it works and how intuitive it is or where things are, it takes, you know, a couple minutes to set it up. And so I would definitely give yourself the freedom to test different systems, like for sure, because you're probably going to switch at some point, right? At some point, you're probably going to change systems for whatever reason. There are lots of reasons, but getting it as close as possible in the beginning is you get there by doing testing. And a part of that too is a lot of these systems offer free trials. But like I said, what ends up happening is we get 2 weeks and then we go, okay, cool. And then we wait 3 days and then we wait 4 days. And so what I would do is do some of this mapping beforehand. Think about your systems. And what I always say is dream big, shoot for the stars, pretend you have the perfect system that does exactly what you want it to do, and then work back based on what's possible.
Right.
But you have that set up. When you get those 2 weeks, you can really maximize those 2 weeks, as opposed to, well, I wasted one thinking about it, and then I wasted 4 days on the weekend, and then I ran out of time. Maximize them as good as you can. And then the other part of it too, so I try out new systems all the time. It's like it's my jam. It's what I do. And it's also how I help people figure out what works best for them. And so one of the things that I do a lot is I am constantly on their help chats asking annoyingly specific questions. So stuff that you think is really intuitive, where you're like, oh, well, can I put a specific date and time on this course on my online course platform? And they're like, no, you can't do that on almost any course platforms. So think about, again, how you use your systems, what you want to do, and then go into their help chat. And instead of saying like, do you have online booking? Say, do you have online booking where somebody can make a deposit and then they can do this with it? Like make really specific requests, because again, in the details is where these systems differ. And that's where you get into a system and you go, well, man, I really thought it was going to do X and it doesn't.
Yeah, that's why it's really important to get started on day one when you're doing that free trial, because only then do you actually get to the details where you can see if it wants to, if it can do whether it can do everything you want it to do.
Yeah. And a lot of these systems too have experts or people that are sort of endorsed by the system that can help you. So maybe you don't pay them to do a full setup, but maybe you do a help chat where you just say like, hey, I need it to do these things. Can it do this? Could you maybe give me a demo? Mm-hmm. And then a lot of people will be glad to do that for you for either very low cost or for free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll just close by saying, because at Jottful, we make websites for business owners, we're very often asked if the applications that they're using can integrate with their website. So can I integrate this calendar software with my website? Can I integrate my newsletter subscription form with my website? And the answer is almost always yes, because almost all of those software applications have something called a code snippet. And whether it's Jottful or whoever your website designer is, they can grab that code snippet from you and stick it on your website and facilitate that integration. So don't worry, it will almost always work with your website. It's really more a matter of making the applications themselves work together if you need to.
Yes, 100% agree. Almost everything can either be embedded or linked to, and that's why like the systems are the important part. It's almost like putting it on your website is kind of an afterthought, because almost anything can go anywhere.
Yep.
Well, that's a wrap. If you enjoyed this episode of Marketing Made Easy, please subscribe to Jottful's YouTube channel. That's JOTTFUL. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll meet you on the next one.